As the film opens, Margo, a second-year college student, is shown doing a part-time job at a theater. It was at this place that she met Robert, a quiet guy. Margo was heading back to college late one night after work when she heard weird noises, which she later discovered were coming from a dog. Margo took pity on the animal and brought it inside the hostel, believing it to be homeless. But when Laura, a student, saw this, she informed Margo that dogs are not permitted at this place. Margo was forced to put the dog back on the street. Margo was woken in the middle of the night by the dog's whimpers and a cry for assistance. She looked forward in the hallway and saw Laura had been mauled by the dog. It proved to be nothing more than a bad dream. Laura went to Margo's room in the morning to make sure the puppy hadn't been brought in covertly. Taylor, Margo's closest friend, is a moderator on a well-known website. Margot works at the movie theater in her spare time and studies archaeology. She felt a spark between them when she saw Robert, who visits this place often, again this evening. Margo pictured herself entering the theater just as the film was starting and taking a seat next to Robert. Robert asked her for her phone number after the concert. They began contacting each other every day after that. Even though they were not the same age, Margot was drawn to Robert. She preferred tall males, first and foremost, and Robert's numerous pets indicated that he was a kind person. But because Taylor still didn't know Robert well, she advised her buddy to proceed with caution. Margo continued to aggressively text Robert despite not taking her worries seriously. She anxiously awaited his messages and would get agitated if he failed to respond after some time. She was hesitant at first, but in the end she consented when Robert proposed taking a nighttime stroll. Margo had faith that Robert would keep her safe. When he gave her a bag of goodies, she at last melted. Margo extended an invitation to visit the lab where she was doing research. Because they had not had much in-person interaction, they both felt uncomfortable. Choosing to text Taylor that Robert was present, Margo did so. There was a joke in the message about Robert maybe being the serial killer. Robert abruptly bolted the door when they discovered they were alone in the historical relic storage room. Robert denied it was him, saying the door had closed itself. While Margo freaked out, Margo had a fit, believing Robert had done it on purpose and was trying to hurt her. Robert had no option but to smash through the door to quiet her. He unintentionally destroyed an ant farm in the process. The queen and almost the whole ant colony were destroyed. Dr. Enid Zabala, who had spent 17 years raising this colony, was very dissatisfied. Margo was embarrassed, as was Robert. After that, they strolled along the street in quiet. Margo was the first to break the quiet, saying she was sorry for her outburst in the storage room and thanking Robert for the sweets. They made the decision to go on and not see this as their first date. Margo thought she would kiss Robert, but he never made the first move. Margo returned home during the vacation. She kept in contact with Robert via SMS throughout this period. The parents naturally saw that their daughter was holding the phone all the time. Margo's stepfather Ernie's birthday is today. Everyone is anxious for the celebration that is coming up. Ernie, who will be 60 this year, would prefer that no one bring up his age, given that Margo doesn't really know Robert well and that it's still too early for her to get into a meaningful relationship. Margo's mother made the decision to have an honest discussion with her daughter. It was an awesome celebration. Margo spoke with her ex-boyfriend Clay later after the guests had left, and he said that he no longer saw the necessity for romantic connections. Though Margo was understanding, Clay didn't want her to believe it was her fault. She emailed Robert a photo she snapped while wearing gorgeous pajamas, since she was having trouble falling asleep at night, but she never heard back from anybody. Returning home, Margo was furious because Robert was still not responding to her messages. She was unable to pinpoint her mistake. Robert finally sent her a message, informing her that he was occupied at work. Margo is unsure about his particular workplace, however. The term got underway. Margo told Taylor during a break that Robert was trying to avoid seeing her. Taylor feels that Margo should be the one to reach out to him and insist on setting up the meeting herself. Margo, nevertheless, was determined to see him one more. She readily accepted to Robert's suggestion to go to the movies. Robert was waiting for her on the campus in the evening. They finally crossed paths a few weeks apart. Fearlessly, Margo climbed into Robert's vehicle, but she knew deep down that she could expect anything from Robert. Margo was jealous of the couples who snuggled and shared popcorn from the same bucket at the movie theater. However, Margo's efforts to approach Robert were unnoticed as he was absorbed in the movie. Robert discovered that Margo was furious about something after the viewing. He didn't want Margo to feel uncomfortable around him since he actually had love emotions for her. Robert offered that they go somewhere, but because the girl wasn't quite 21 years old, she couldn't go. Robert had assumed she was older till then. However, Margo was really just 20. She felt silly and was unable to control her tears. This touched Robert, and he couldn't help but kiss her. Margo never felt a better kiss in her life. She would never have guessed that a mature man of his caliber had no prior experience with anything like this. They visited a different bar. Taylor called, but Margo didn't answer. Robert delivered drinks, to which Margo offered a toast. Margo contacted the buddy later and told her everything that had transpired while she was in the bathroom. Margo sounded inebriated, and Taylor could tell by the sound of her voice, so he told her to get a cab right away. But Margo had other ideas entirely. She thought Robert was funny and kind. Margo felt certain that Robert would appreciate her, and that their relationship would become stronger as a result. They got at Robert's residence. It was obvious that he was anxious. Inside, it felt nice and warm. When Margo inquired about Robert's cat, he either didn't hear her or chose to ignore her query. Taylor continued to text the buddy out of concern for her. Margo attempted to ignore her dreams about Robert, even though she still had doubts that he may not be who he claimed to be. Robert recommended that you visit his room. Robert was definitely not the appropriate man, but Margaret accepted against the advice of her intuition. What if he posed a threat? Margo should not have been here, but it was too late. She didn't want to annoy Robert because of his awkward behavior. Right now, all Margot wanted was to get out of there. She had never made a worse choice than this one. Robert proposed seeing a movie once it was finished. Margo had spent the whole time desperately trying to come up with a reason to disappear. She didn't know Robert's true age until today. As it happened, his age was 33. This was not a welcome surprise. Margo had assumed he was much younger. Robert firmly believes that a genuine relationship has begun between them. The girl of his fantasies is Margo. Robert became agitated when Margot said that it was time to return to the dorm. He'd assumed Margot would remain till morning, at which time he would prepare brunch for her. Margo expressed her friend's concern. Well, Robert did drive Margo. She was expecting an angry response from him, but Robert stayed composed. Robert sent Margot a message as soon as she walked inside her room. He would not leave her alone now, for sure. For Margo, the following morning was just like any other. Like a horrible dream, she wanted to forget about last night. During a break, Taylor inquired how things was doing in the dining room. Margot said that it was very terrible. Robert, meanwhile, kept fluttering with messages. Margot feels that Taylor's suggestion to ban him from her phone and social media accounts is too severe. It had now dawned on her that there was not a single cat in Robert's apartment. This was concerning, in Taylor's opinion. Maybe he had lied about the cats on purpose to make himself seem innocuous. This implied that Robert was hiding something. All day, Margot ignored Robert's messages, but he persisted too much. Margo was enraged yet helpless. She was planning to write Robert a lengthy note in the evening explaining that she was too busy studying to meet him. Margot was unable to end her relationship with Robert, however, when he sent her a charming video. At that point, Taylor made the decision to act independently, taking the friend's phone and shutting herself in a different room, whereby she informed Robert that their relationship was finished on Margot's behalf. Margot was anxiously awaiting an answer, fearing that Robert, in his sorrow, might hurt himself. Taylor was there to provide assistance at every turn. At last, a reply arrived. Robert apologized in the letter and wished Margot well. Margo had a combination of relief and remorse at that time. Later on, Margo and Taylor were enjoying drinks at a pub beside their pals who were students. Margo eventually found out that Robert was there and hurried away. Along with her, the pals departed. Robert had seen Margot in the pub and sent her a message the same evening. Ultimately, this evening, he longed to chat to her and expressed how much he missed her. She should disregard it, Taylor said. Robert continued to send texts in the meanwhile, one after the other, but suddenly it was insulting rather than innocuous. Robert was envious because he believed Margo had a new partner. Now, Margot felt constantly unsafe as she strolled along the street late at night. She was startled to see Robert in the movie theater parking lot, but he just drove off. But Margo was terrified to come back to the campus by herself after work. Robert seemed to be waiting around the next bend or following her, in her opinion. The fact that Margo's phone was dead on arrival just made the issue worse. The sound of an automobile engine terrified Margo, so she took off running and dialed 911. Since Robert didn't even approach Margo, the police was unable to find any proof of a crime. Perhaps he was merely inebriated when he wrote all those hurtful notes yesterday. However, Margo didn't feel any safer as a result. She started to become paranoid. She and Taylor went to a gun shop and got multiple pepper sprays and a bug for self-defense. The police believe Margot is making everything up, so she wants to be sure Robert is indeed following her. The pals had a falling out that evening. Margot finds it annoying that Taylor takes her need for total control too far. Conversely, Taylor thinks her buddy is cut off from reality and lives in a dream world. Margo rode her bike to Robert's home late at night in order to put the bug on his automobile. Taylor went into Margo's room at the same moment because she realized she had left her laptop charger there. Taylor was concerned when she could not locate her pal. As all of this was going on, Margo crept into Robert's garage and heard a dog snap. The dog she had spotted earlier on campus was standing in front of her. Robert came there, assuming someone had broken in. He spotted Margo, who accused him of following her instead of thieves. She took out the pepper spray but sprayed herself inadvertently when Robert got too near. Taylor, worried, called for a taxi. She just knows the street address of Robert, not his precise address. It was Margo who woke up on Robert's sofa. He knew she had attempted to put the bug on his vehicle, so he sought an explanation from her. Robert refused to let Margo go even though she wanted to. Regardless of what Margo stated, the cops would find him guilty if they saw him in this state. The cops would always trust the woman in these situations more than the male. Robert's only question now is, if Margo really despises him, why did she write him all those kind notes and offer him false hope? When Robert labeled Margo a liar, she sobbed and claimed that while she had been serious at first, that night had failed her. Margo refrained from stating it straight immediately out of concern for Robert's sentiments. Margo assumed Robert understood how to provide first aid since he had previously been pepper sprayed by females when he offered to wash her face with a saline solution. The only reason Robert really knows this, however, is because he is a nurse. Margo never thought to inquire about his place of employment. Now that she's going to the police right away to provide her version of events, Robert can't simply let her go. Robert can no longer trust Margo, even if she volunteered to draft a contract and made a vow not to do this. Margo attempted to exit by the front door, but it was locked while Robert was temporarily in the other room. Margo planned to call 911 as a result. Robert grabbed her phone as soon as he saw this. A brawl broke out between them. Robert had to stop Margo from leaving, or else everything would end for him. There is, in fact, at least one cat in Robert's home. Robert pursued Margo when she attempted to flee via the garage. They unintentionally spilled flammable liquid during the battle, starting a fire. The windows and entrance were secured. Robert cried out for assistance, but nobody answered. Margo was suspicious when Robert lifted the cover of a hatch on the floor. Is that actually where his victims are? Robert yelled at her to believe him, saying there wasn't much time left, but Margo was skeptical despite the dire circumstances. Eventually, when the flames became stronger, Margo was forced to fall too. Taylor requested the driver to go there after seeing the fire. When the firemen put out the fires in the morning, they discovered no one. All Taylor could do was hope for better. Abruptly, a fireman exclaimed that there was a person within the basement. When they opened the hatch, Margo and Robert were both unconscious. When Taylor found out they were both still alive, it gave him great comfort. Margo awoke at the medical facility. Her relatives were present already. Margo was released from the hospital after a while. She felt bad walking past Robert's burned-out home. All Margo knows is that Robert moved away and resigned from the hospital after the event. Margo went back to working at the theater. The film closes with her being requested for the phone number by a dashing man.